Why do you teach? Why did you go into teaching? I think I went into teaching because I wanted to make a difference. And this week, I got an email from a student that was it's it's why we teach. My guess is you got into teaching for all the right reasons. You saw maybe you had a gift of helping people. Maybe you saw that you maybe thought you could make an impact and a difference. Well, teachers, we make a difference. As I begin my 40th year in education, uh, I have just been reminded about why I teach. So I want to share with you guys a personal letter that I just received from a former student that made an impact in me. It's the kind of letter that rocks your world. So a few days ago, I got an email from a student who graduated last year from our school. I teach high school sophomores, juniors, and seniors, and this letter moved me to tears. It just it's the letters that you hope you make an impact, and oftentimes, one of the things with teaching, you never know if you're going to make a difference. And let me just read parts of this letter to you that and I hope that someday you know that this is what you're doing, teachers. You are making a difference in the lives of your students. So, hey, Mr. Bergman. So this is from former student. As the summer wraps up and is about to leave for college on Saturday, I just wanted to send you a thank you note, a reminder to you how much you truly impacted me in my time at Houston Christian. Thank you for always believing in me, whether that had been in my chemistry or physics class. I taught her both chemistry and physics. Thank you for always staying during lunch or before school to help me get a deeper understanding of concepts. Thanks for instilling core values into my life, values such as tenacity and honesty. And here's the line that really hit me. I didn't know I needed a leader like you in my life. You saw through to my future. You provided me with such a time that I would be molded by the lessons you taught, both school-related and lifelong principle-wise. I truly believe that the lessons you taught me about learning will pour not only into my school life, but also into my social life and the way I encourage others in all they do, just as you did to me. Guys, these kinds of words, I don't know, they're a soothe to my soul, and I hope that you know that whether you get a letter like this or not, it's a letter like this. This is what you're building into the lives of your students. You are not just teaching them stuff. You're teaching them how to live life. She continues that this is, my wife read this letter and she said, this gal has a lot of maturity. And this is 100% true. This is an amazing young lady. You taught me that learning is a gift. I remember the hours of struggling that I did and the frustration I had to understand the concepts in physics. But when you started every class off with a prayer, thanking God for making a world so complex that we, so blessed, get to learn about it, I realized that understanding and mastering the concepts wasn't everything. What mattered was the choice I made during my struggle to continue seeking for that understanding and to have a desire to learn. And she's picked up the message, right? I want my students to become lifelong learners who know that learning is a struggle, right? That productive struggle is what makes learning good, but in the context of a loving, relational, centric, is that a word? Uh, Context. And then she recalls something, and this is actually the open letter. If you listened back to the podcast, this is the kinds of things I share with my students. I remember in the article you wrote, you said, I wrote an article about how flipped, or not how flipped, I wrote an article about how AI will stupefy students unless we're careful. So I had my students read this article. So that's what she's referring to. I remember in an article you wrote, you said how kids these days are losing their desire to learn. Thinking of the future, I don't want to be one of those kids. By the way, that's not what I said, but that's interesting that that's what she said. I said, AI will stupefy you unless you do these things. And so maybe you should go back and read my article because I think she misinterpreted it. But she got the big gist, right? And she says, I don't want to be one of those kids. I want to excel in all I do, always asking the deeper questions and always pushing for more understanding. Why? Because you taught me that going the extra mile will only ever help me. You taught me that being curious is such an admirable trait that it will bless me in all that I do. So as I go off to college, I will not only carry with me all you taught me about teaching and being curious and having tenacity. And then she goes on and talks about we're a faith-based school, and I'm a person of faith. And so I created I didn't create this, honestly, guys. As a believer in God, I felt like it was given to me on an airplane. Backstory, I was at a conference, ASCD conference, in fact, a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, and the keynote speaker talked about how a teacher had made an impact in his life. And one thing he said is that teacher had a saying that really stuck with him. The teacher said every day, something about believing in themselves, the kids. I forget exactly what the saying was, but as I was on the plane, I thought, could I have one of those? Could I have one of those sayings? And so I felt like, honestly, as again, a person of faith, that I was given that on the plane. I was just jotting and brainstorming on a piece of paper, and I came up with Jiffy, Jify. Now, again, I come from a Christian-based platform, and I'm a Christian, and the saying is, Jesus is for you, Jify. And so I say that literally every day to my students. I've said that every day since school started here already. So my students are starting to learn that that is a thing. And anyway, so now I'm going to go back to the letter. So as I go off to college, I want to only carry with me what you taught me about learning, curiosity, tenacity, but also Jiffy. It's been written in my Bible for a long time. That just amazed me. That's little saying. Yeah, that was cool. And as you said that at the end of the year, JIFM, Jesus is for, and then the student's last name or first name starts with an M. I'll say Mary. It's not Mary. Jesus is for Mary. It warms my heart to look back at the way you led your classrooms towards God. And then she goes on about that topic. And I just want you to know that you make a difference. And don't hear that I'm trying to be preachy about my faith. What I'm trying to say is that teachers, you make a difference. And it's all the little things that you do. It's not just what you teach, how you teach, what you think about AI, if you teach with flip learning or you don't, it's about how we connect with students, and it's those intangible lessons. I'm a huge fan of Lord of the Rings, and The Lord of the Rings is a classic hero story, and in the hero story, there's always a Gandalf, right? And at this stage in my career, as I'm an old guy, right? This 40 years, right? 40. I think I can classify as the old teacher. And as the old teacher, I guess at some level I get to play the role of Gandalf and to my students, and hopefully, because every good story has a Gandalf, a wise old sage man or woman to lead the way, and we can be that for our students. And maybe you're a younger teacher and you get to be like the older brother or sister. I mean, but you can play a role in the lives of your students that's going to make a huge difference. Making a difference matters. And again, I said this in a podcast, that last podcast of last year, as I was reflecting actually on my seniors who were about to graduate. You might want to, I'll link it in the show notes. And I talked about just thinking about students. And in fact, in that podcast, I talked about missing this particular student. And I want you to know that you make a difference. And so often you don't get the tangible results. You'll never see that this student has impacted. Maybe they're going to go off and they're going to remember that lesson 30 years and you'll be gone. I'm not going to live 30 more years, I doubt. I'm 60, whatever years old. So, but we make a difference that lasts forever. And I want to encourage you to remember that as you begin this school year. Remember that you make a difference. Again, whether or not you ever get a letter like the one I just got, you make a difference. This is, in fact, called the Reach Every Student podcast, reacheverystudent.com. And I encourage you to share this with your friends and, like it on your podcast app and all that good stuff. John Bergman out.